from the vault, high atop the pastoral center of the Diocese of Camden, you're listening to Talking Catholic.
Hello again, everybody, to Talking Catholic, the official podcast of the Catholic community of South Jersey. Once again, I'm Pete Sanchez with my co-host Mike Walsh, Director of Communications. Hey, Mike.
How are you this lovely, humid, wet, disgusting, not quite August day?
Yeah, it's pretty miserable, I think. But it's nice. I've been warm and cozy here in the Pastoral Center, too. I have not ventured out.
Oh, really? I haven't been outside yet?
Not yet. I was, I don't know, I don't like the humidity. It's just soupy out there, and the air quality is not up to par.
No, I agree with you. It's not fun times. However, it is always fun being in the vault with you. Yes. Particularly coming off of, if you didn't get a chance to listen to our last podcast with Father Joe Capella, not many of you didn't, because I was looking at the listenership of that podcast, and it was through the roof. One of the biggest podcast listens we've ever had, so apparently we have a lot of Father Joe Capella fans out there. We'll have to bring him back on a more regular basis.
I think so. I'm not surprised. Everybody I know who knows Father Joe is nothing but great things to say about him. And I'm happy that we had him on. And if you're one of those who hasn't heard it, it's it's archived. So check it out. He has a very interesting story to tell. And Mike, we have some things coming up. Exciting news, as always. You can go to camdendiocese.org, look at the calendar on the right-hand side to find all these news, bits, and more for stuff going on. But we've talked about this, Mike, for a few weeks now. I can't bang the drum enough for this. The Light the Fire event at St. Michael Church, 10 North Mississippi Avenue in Atlantic City. The Franciscan Sisters of the Renewal are hosting Light the Fire, a night of prayer, praise, and street evangelization on Friday, August 3rd. Actually, the next two first Fridays of the month, August 3rd, and then September 7th. All the days, the two events begin 6:15. There's going to be Mass. And then it'll include going out in teams to the streets, invite people in the church to pray, and the event will conclude with night prayer at 9:30. And Mike, you and I are both going to be there.
Yes, we are.
So I'm excited.
And we also have big news that the sisters have agreed to come back on the podcast, right? At some point in the future?
At some point in the future.
Yes.
We're trying to... So pray for that. Pray that soon enough that will happen. But I did have a very enthusiastic conversation with Sister Ann Cattery this morning. She said that they're enthusiastic about coming, but we just have to dot the I's and cross the T's right now. So hopefully in the near future.
Our people have to talk to their people is what you're trying to say? No.
Yeah, well...
We just have to get our schedules in order. That's really what we have to do.
Yeah,
but they are... anyone who knows how much we love having them on and how great the podcast we had with them last year was, and I'm very much looking forward to seeing what their perspective is now that they've been in the diocese for a full year now, I think.
Almost, I think August.
Yeah,
right?
It was August 15th is their official. They moved into the diocese in late July, and they were open for business by August 15th.
Yeah.
So we spoke to them early on, and they're now a year invested in everything that they've been doing in Atlantic City. And it's all been receiving rave reviews. Yeah. So we're looking forward to it.
And I think. Me too, and I think that's why we haven't been able to nail down something yet. We are, they've just been so busy, but all doing great work. And also, speaking of Atlantic City, Mike, the Wedding of the Sea is coming up on the Feast of the Assumption on Wednesday, August 15th. At noon, Bishop Sullivan will celebrate a Mass at the Adrian Phillips Ballroom of Boardwalk Hall. And after that, Bishop Sullivan, Dennis Sullivan, our bishop here, will process to the surf in Atlantic City to throw a wreath, the wreath toss, as I guess they call it.
Technically, it's the ring toss.
The wreath.
Because the wreath symbolizes the ring that was originally thrown into the sea by the Archbishop of Venice in the 1700s, sometime back then.
Yes. It just says wreath toss. It just sounds... I was thinking ring toss in my head. So come out to this. It's a wonderful tradition. Pray for good weather. Pray to Mary that she blesses us with wonderful weather that day. And then afterwards, there'll be a festival at St. Michael's Church right down the road. That'll run from 1 to 7 p.m., free, open to the public. There'll be 12 food vendors from some of the best restaurants in the neighborhood, including the Ducktown Tavern. There'll be a beer garden, live music, games, all kinds of food, outdoor and air-conditioned indoor seating. There'll be free parking available as well across Georgia Avenue from the Ducktown Tavern. And visitors can also park at the Wave parking garage on Fairmount Avenue. Both locations only a block from St. Michael's. So, and this is great too, Mike. If you attend the Mass, you can park your car at Boardwalk Hall and then just take a jitney shuttle right to the festival.
Or be like the sisters and walk.
Yeah, well, I mean, if
it's not that, it's only 3 blocks.
No, but I mean, if it's pouring rain, it was pretty rainy last year, and the year before it was tremendously hot.
That is true.
I remember
both of them were quite uncomfortable. Yeah, that's true.
Yes.
So this year will be great.
It will. We're gonna get the best of both worlds. Yeah. It's not going to be too hot.
We'll probably get snow this time.
Mother Mary, please grant us great weather that day. On the this is going to be
and don't Wednesday. Forget, we always make sure to let everyone know that not only is there Wedding of the Sea ceremonies and masses at in Atlantic City on that feast day on the 15th, there's also a vigil mass in Wildwood the night before that Bishop Sullivan will be at, along with all the seminarians, and then each of the shore towns usually have their own procession and mass. Well, they always have a mass on the feast day, of course, but they oftentimes have a wedding of the ceremony as well, a wedding of the sea ceremony as well. I certainly know Avalon Stone Harbor do it. I believe Seattle does it. I believe Cape May does it. So check your local listings to see if your shore town does something as well. Yeah,
and thanks, Mike. Thanks for bringing that up. But so come on out to any of those events for the Wedding of the Sea Festival and. Again, pray to Mary for great weather. Mike, coming up, jumping a few months to October 4th, the 15th Annual Justice for All Dinner and Award Ceremony in Atlantic City.
Yes.
Atlantic City's a happening place.
We and not by accident, actually. The diocese over the last year or two has, in an effort to be part of the rebirth of the city, we have been trying to do more things in Atlantic City so that we too can be part of that rebirth. The two newest casino hotels have opened recently.
I was there.
Yeah, sure. I'm bringing in jobs to that area. When the recession hit in 2008, a lot of those casinos started to fold, and it was the Catholic Church who went in first and foremost, doing everything they can to find job training and jobs for the people who are who were laid off because of those closures. And now that Atlantic City is being to foster again, we want to come in there and be supportive of the success the city is having. So it's been great, and much like the Wedding of the Sea, we too want to foster our relationship to the city.
Yeah. Man,
so this year, like it was last year, the Justice for All dinner will be honoring someone who's done great work in the area of Catholic social justice, and they're honoring Sister Norma Pimentel, who is the executive director of Catholic Charities of the Rio Grande Valley, who has been on the front lines of the immigration concerns of the border on Mexico. She's run a respite center which cares for thousands of immigrants who cross the border every year, and she has no political agenda. She is only there to help people in need. She does not interfere with, she and the staff, of course, do not interfere with anything related to logistics or legality. They are just there to be of support to the people who are coming across, and they receive tens of thousands of volunteers every year who come down to support, just to be kind and Catholic. that is what she does. So she's a remarkable woman, and her programs in the Diocese of Brownsville are remarkable. So she's certainly someone in honor who is deserving of this honor. In addition to her, there will be, as there has been in previous years, there will be local award winners. They're called the Disciples of Mercy from each of the deaneries of the Diocese of Camden, who will be receiving awards as well. And I believe those will be announced probably in a couple of weeks, who those recipients are. But that we're looking forward to. And that's always a great event, too, to be able to promote the people who are doing things locally to be of service to others in the community. Last year's recipients each one was better than the next, or maybe as good as the next. And I wouldn't want to say one was better than the other. And then I've seen some of the submissions for this year, and they, too, are quite notable.
I look forward to hearing. That'll be in the StarHerald.org when those local Disciples of Mercy will be announced. I'm excited for all their stories, to hear Sister Norma, and also to meet who these awardees are. And this is going to be October 4th at 5:30 p.m. at Resorts Hotel in Atlantic City. It's important, too, all proceeds from this event will be used. It's going to provide direct assistance to the poor and most vulnerable here in South Jersey that are served by Catholic Charities. So go to www.catholiccharities.camden.org/JFA2018 for more information. So,
otherwise known as JFA 2018.
JFA 2018, yes.
But yeah, catholiccharities.org/JFA 2018.
CatholicCharitiesCamden.org.
Yeah, right.
So it's
you would think I would remember that URL address at some point, but it's not going to happen anytime soon.
So many websites, Mike.
It is, and they all get jumbled together in my brain. So
same here.
Put in Justice for All Dinner in your Google search, and it'll come up. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Anyway, and now finally, as our last bit, for the first time ever, we have an actual ad to run.
Woohoo!
I know, a real thing. So here it comes.
On November 10th, the Man Up Men's Spirituality Conference comes to South Jersey. Do you want to be the missionary disciple that God intends? Do you want the opportunity to invigorate and unleash the Holy Spirit in your life? Do you want to be a better son, a better husband, a better father? Do you want to be a better man? Then register today at manupsouthjersey.com for this powerful men's spirituality conference. The conference will feature dynamic speakers, Eucharistic adoration, and tips on creating parish prayer groups. Priests will be available throughout the day for the sacrament of reconciliation. This spiritually inspired day will conclude with Mass celebrated by Bishop Dennis Sullivan. To register, go to manupsouthjersey.com. Don't miss this important event. It could change your life. Be the man that God intended. Register today at manupsouthjersey.com.
Wow, Mike? Who is that mellifluous voice? First off,
okay. Well, that was Mr. Dr. Bill Watson, former guest of the podcast from the school's office, who lent his excellent voiceover work to that great ad for Man Up South Jersey. And when the request came through to do a radio ad for this event, I couldn't think of anyone better than he. So I thank him very much for agreeing to be our voiceover guy.
That was perfection. What I mean, and Mike, I'm glad So that is perfect timing, Mike. Because who do we have? With us?
We have someone who I've grown quite close to over the last 6 months. He and I have been working hand in hand on this event that's coming up, Man Up South Jersey. Deacon Anthony Cioe is with us today. Hello, Deacon. How are you?
Gentlemen, I am great. I'm so happy to be with you today. Thank you very much. I was just listening to that introduction. I was listening to the ads. I was listening to everything that's going on. I've got to tell you, there are so many exciting things happening in this diocese. It's absolutely amazing. And to hear that I'm doing this podcast after Father Capella and the sisters, and they got such high ratings, you're really putting a lot of pressure on me now.
Yes, we
to
are.
be able to get ratings on this one as well. So.
I'm expecting to see a lot of shares on social media. I'm expecting to see if we don't get if we don't get in the Capella range, I'll be devastated.
Well, listen, if I don't get asked back again, I will know why. Because obviously I did not pull my draw on this. But gentlemen, I am really so happy to be here with you today. And that ad was absolutely amazing. You want to talk about exciting? I myself can't wait to go to that conference.
I know, and we're running it, so it's like it's great. So Deacon Anthony is heading up the Man Up South Jersey Men's Spirituality Conference in November. That we're all very excited in the diocese that we'll be able to host it. Now, Deacon Anthony, this is not the first ever Man Up. Man Up started where?
That's correct. The actual Man Up name for the conference started in Philadelphia, right across the river from us. The gentleman by the name of Eustace Mita, very successful businessman, and what his idea and his desire to give back was to be able to create this conference, and he called it Man Up, and it started about 10 years ago. And his purpose was to be able to bring an event where men could come together to encounter Christ in a special way. That's what he did, and that's what he's continued to do for the last 10 years, and it continues to be more successful each and every year. We worked with him this year to the request of the bishop to be able to work with him. He has just been phenomenal in terms of sharing with us his resources. So this will be our first Man Up conference in the Diocese of Camden in South Jersey, but we bring with us a long tradition of success, a great program, and honestly a great structure that works so well. So we're exceptionally excited about what's happening and what we're putting together with this conference.
And I attended last year's Man Up in Philadelphia, having never been to it before, but knowing we were putting this together, and I wanted to get sort of a feel for it. The reaction of the people in the seats, I mean, it was intense. They were visibly and oftentimes physically moved by the open and honest reflections on that they were hearing from these other Catholic men as they were talking about what changes they had gone through, what motivated them, why they are where they are today, and how their Catholic faith played an important role in that, and how as they've become older and more seasoned men, they've realized that their Catholic faith is even more important to their daily life than they realized. And, you know, I've been to many of these conferences where you'll have people sitting back on their phones, checking their email, not a single person that I see the entire time. Right. They were locked in to every single one of the presenters.
And Mike, I think what you hit the nail on the head. What we have is the ability to bring men to this event who could speak about their own faith experience. Men who have encountered difficulties in their lives, men who have struggled, men who still continue to struggle, but they're able to relate to us how their faith has continued to allow them to move forward, move on, and be the better man, be the person that God intended them to be. That is part of the formula of this. We have great speakers coming this year. We have been able to assemble a group of speakers who are just dynamic in terms of what they're going to be able to bring. May I talk about a few of those,
Absolutely, please.
Gentlemen? There's a few whose names will be very, very notable to you. So for those of you who are hockey fans from the old days, from some of those glory days, Don Saleski will be one of our speakers. Don Saleski brings a great story, and it's not just about his days of playing hockey. It's also a story about his faith, and he talks about how important it is to him. But he also does talk about his days as a flyer. So he just gives a dynamic presentation, one that really fills everyone with the Spirit and lets us understand that, you know, we could be rough and tough men, but you know what? We really need to be spiritual as well, and we can be. He really brings a great deal with him to this particular event. Brian Gail. Brian Gail was a former baseball player, pro baseball player. There's a man who has experienced some of the lowest lows in his life. But he talks about those things, and he talks about how his faith has continued to allow him to move forward. He's also a great writer. He's written 3 books, and he'll talk about some of those things in those books as well. For those of you who are familiar with Mark Forrest, who is the Irish tenor, the singer, when he does a holy hour, it's beyond belief.
Yeah.
Through his singing and through his reflection, he brings the holy hour to life. He brings the presence of the Eucharist to life in the midst of everyone there. It's just absolutely amazing.
I'm so excited to hear him.
I have to tell you, these things are great. And there's other speakers. We have some of our local speakers as well, some folks who are important within our diocese who also share with us some of their life experiences. But all in all, what we get is a group of men who are not talking high theology. They're not talking above our heads. They're talking about how they have become better husbands, better fathers, better sons, better brothers, okay? Better men, because of their openness to allow Jesus to come into their lives, and because of their openness to the Holy Spirit. We are exceptionally excited because we know that what we're doing here is providing an opportunity for men to encounter Christ in a special way and to leave differently, and hopefully to leave and be able to go back to their parishes and be able to become stronger in their faith and be able to make those changes in their lives, to become stronger in their lives and do those things that God intended for them to do. It's exciting, guys. It really is exciting.
Yeah, that's the thing you were talking about with missionary discipleship. It's just great to see this theme with that we've been talking about for, I think, almost a few years now. Missionary discipleship and Pope Francis and the bishop. And so coming in, how, with your experience, how long have you been a deacon?
I've been a deacon 8 years.
8 years?
I was ordained about 8 years ago. I was first assigned to St. Stephen's in Pennsauken. And just about a year ago, I was reassigned to St. Peter and Paul in Sewell. So that's my new assignment now, and I'm over there with those folks and just loving every minute of it. But each of us is called, I think, in a different way. Each of us is given talents, and each of us is then asked to take those talents and use those so that we are finding the need and being able to fulfill it. Deacons are servants. Our role is to be a servant. Our role is to, again, find that need and fill it. I truly believe that where I've been led by the Holy Spirit is in the direction of evangelization, to be able to speak and witness to my faith to people and to hopefully bring them closer to Christ. So when we start talking about missionary discipleship, we kind of go back a step and we say, okay, we've been talking about evangelization for forever. You know, the mandate that we have from Christ is to go out and share the good news. And that's been a tradition. And in the Second Vatican Council, we were given the mandate as baptized Christians to share the good news. It's not something that we're asked to do. It's something that we have to do. We are empowered to share our faith, and woe to us if we don't share our faith, if I could take the words from St. Paul. So when we talk about evangelization and sharing our faith, that has become such an important message from the Church since the beginning, very, very strongly since Second Vatican Council. And we continue to hear that message. But evangelization is what we do. Missionary disciples are who we become. And that's where we start to see the difference as we're talking now. Missionary discipleship, okay, is meeting people where they are, understanding what they're seeking, and leading them to an encounter with the person who holds the answer to all of their yearnings.
Yeah.
And that person is Jesus Christ. So we share our faith, and then through sharing our faith, we then get others to become deeper in their faith and to, again, share their faith with others as well. So we look at creating missionary disciples as kind of a four-step process. First, we provide the encounter. We do what we can to help lead people to an encounter where they meet Christ. We then accompany those people so that we walk with them. We help them to get stronger in their faith through learning and growing, and then we bring them into the community to become a part of the community, because that's where everything happens. Everything happens in the community. Mass, the sacraments, the social nature of it, and the support. Once we have brought folks to that point, we are then able to send them out. And that becomes the final step, where they too then become missionary disciples, where they take what they've learned. They take their zeal for the gospel, and they then bring that to other people. So the message that we continue to hear is that we evangelize and we create missionary disciples. That is something that has become very, very important for me personally, and that's where I spend much of my time in the work that I do. I work along with Andreas in the Office of Evangelization, talking to parishes about how do we create a culture of missionary discipleship within their parishes, so that they too can help bring that message and bring folks to Christ. So for me, that's been a personal call. I do many other things as well. In my diaconate role, but I would probably say the one that I'm called to most strongly is that role of evangelization and missionary discipleship. This Man Up Conference is a great growth of that mission, because what the conference is hoping to do is to be able to bring the encounter, accompany people, because hopefully what we'll do is we'll accompany them in their faith and they get back to the parishes. Okay? We bring them back into the community so they become stronger in their community, and they then go out and evangelize others as well. So that's where this particular conference falls in, and that's what we hope to be able to do with it.
Now, I've heard many people say that the Catholic Church has lost its story and its roots, its traditions. Maybe not so much lost its story as the culture has corrupted its story. How can we recover that through Man Up? And I mean, what's a solution? How can we as Catholics and as Catholic men, how can we realize our story?
Pete, that's a great question. It really is. First of all, here's one thing I have to put out there first. Remember that Jesus tells us to feed his sheep. He doesn't ask us to count them. So while we worry about numbers sometimes, we have to understand that it's not just a numbers game. Okay, we need to feed the sheep, because when we feed the sheep, that's when we strengthen them and bring them back into the church. So you're right. If we look at how many Catholics have left the faith, oh my gosh, the number is astounding. And quite frankly, it could be depressing. But I think we have a great opportunity. We have to understand that we need to meet people where they are. We need to understand where culture is. We need to understand what culture is doing, how culture is communicating. We don't change the message. The message of the gospel, the message of our faith is the same. It doesn't change. But how we share it becomes different. How we meet the needs of the people becomes different. When people see Jesus in our eyes, when they see the face of Jesus, when we're helping them, when we're addressing their needs, when we're bringing them those things they need in life, that's the encounter that we bring them to. And then we need to be able to accompany them through explaining our faith. We can't get depressed by the numbers that we see. I'll tell you a great story, if I can. Let me share a story with you, if I may. There are two competing shoe companies, and both shoe companies are looking to increase market share. So they both send their top salesperson to an underdeveloped country to assess the market, to see if there's a market for shoes. After one day, the shoe salesman for the first shoe company calls back to the president of his company and says, "Sir, sorry, this was a wasted trip. I spent a whole day here. I've been to every village I possibly could be. There's no market here. Nobody wears shoes." The second salesperson that night calls the president of his company, and he's excited beyond belief. He says, "Sir, you can't believe this. I'm not coming back. I'm staying here for a while. This is an amazing market. No one wears shoes." Do you understand the difference? The difference is that we have people, okay, who need what we have to give to them. And we can either stand at the door of our church, okay, with our arms crossed, tapping our foot and say, if they don't come in here, we can't help them. Or we can walk out past the door of our church. We can walk into the community. We can reach the people who need it and be able to give them what they need. And what they need is Jesus in their lives. So, to go back to your question, yes, our faith seems to have diminished in many ways, and culture seems to be fighting it very, very hard, but there is an amazing opportunity that we have. We just need to be able to go out into the community, meet people where they are, show them the face of Christ. And when we do that, we will bring others back into the church.
I think that's all about attitude.
Yes.
So we were saying,
Mm-hmm.
I heard in some article that I read recently, a Catholic leader, I forget if it was a cardinal or a bishop, really put things in perspective, where he said, we can either view this world as, we can view this culture as two things. One, the apocalypse or end of the world, or two, mission territory. And I like that. That's right. Kind of that is the same exact vibe that you're saying. And unfortunately, I do know people that are like the First Shoe Company that kind of just keep their head down, and this world is a mess. But there is so much opportunity. You're right. To evangelize, and even what the Pope talked about. We cannot passively, I'm quoting him now, we cannot passively and calmly wait in our church buildings.
That's right.
We need to move from a pastoral ministry of mere conservation to a decidedly missionary pastoral ministry as individuals who know and live the faith and with joy share the gospel.
That's right. It's critical. It's absolutely critical.
And how can we, who is there an age limit on this Man Up? Who can come? 18? Or...
There is not. We're saying to fathers, saying, dads, bring your sons. I mean, there's nothing that's going to be discussed that's going to be something that we have to cover people's ears for. We're saying that if you're high school age, you want to come by yourself, that's fine. If you're younger than that, you want to come with a parent, hey, that's great. We welcome everybody because we think that the message that we're going to hear is a message that just will resonate with everyone. I just need to go back to something you just said. And I hope you don't mind me digressing for a second, because you said it's the attitude, okay? And you mentioned in what the Pope said about we can't be a church of maintenance. We can't wrap our arms around what we have and say, we just got to keep this at all costs. We have to be bold in what we do. And people have to see the joy in our faces. People need to be able to come up to us and say, I don't know what it is you have, but I want what you have. Because look at what's on your face. Recently, and it's probably within the last 2 years, the Pope made a great statement. He used a phrase that roughly translates into the face of a pickled pepper. When he said that, he said, as Catholics, we can't have the face of a pickled pepper. We have to look as though we are happy. We have to share the joy. Exactly right. Exactly right. So these are important parts of what we're being asked to do, and it is an attitude. Remember that in everything, the Holy Spirit is the principal agent of evangelization. It is the Holy Spirit who directs it, who guides it. We're planting seeds. That's what we're doing. We're planting seeds for the Holy Spirit to be able to develop, for our community to be able to develop through the good work of the Holy Spirit. So as long as we keep in mind that the task may seem big, but with the Holy Spirit on our side, there's nobody who's going to beat us. We're going to be able to get that message out there. Man Up is one thing that we're doing among many, because you mentioned things at the beginning of the program. You talk about the news. There are things that we are doing as a community that will help bring an encounter to the people.
Yeah. And that really was it was that sense of encounter that really moved me a great deal about Man Up Man Up Philly when I attended, and I know is part of the backbone of the planning of Man Up South Jersey. Some people might ask, why a men's conference? Why? And as a Knight of Columbus, I get this a lot for, why a men's only organization. And I will tell you that as a Knight, and Pete, you can tell me your thoughts on this as well, it is difficult oftentimes, I think, in public for us to express our spirituality sort of openly and honestly. And not that we can't do that around women. Certainly I do that around women all the time. But there's an openness that you get by being around your fellow men and seeing the difficulty that they've had, the trials and the triumphs of what they've gone through. That there's a sensation to that I don't think can be repeated in every other kind of conference or meeting situation. That I think this allows it. And and as someone who doesn't get to spend time with male counterparts on a regular basis, just amongst my friends even, I relish these opportunities because they're so rare. It's a rare occasion where I get to be around people who are just as flawed and troubled and masculine as me, as we're trying to navigate our way through. And in this day and age where, Pete, you kind of alluded to it earlier, the culture has changed a little bit, and definitions of masculinity and femininity have certainly altered in the past decade or so. Bringing men together again, I think is needed. And that's not to say that bringing men together answers any questions. It just puts us around each other where we get to have a sense of each other.
That's right. Absolutely. And you know what else it does? Men around each other have the opportunity to let their guard down, to actually allow themselves to be a little more spiritual. As men, and again, I'm not just saying just men, but every day we have to be strong in what we do. We have to provide answers to everything. We've got to be working so hard. There's things that we think culturally we're expected to do because we're men. When we come together in this environment of a men's spirituality conference, what we're really doing is we're giving men the opportunity to drop their guard, to be able to sing. Hopefully we're going to have 600 or 700 men, or hopefully more, singing at Mass and at other times during it. Go to confession. We're going to have confessions throughout the day. In Philadelphia, we were just amazed at the men who lined up for confession, who haven't been there in years, or who, again, were able to drop the stigma, the aura that they seem to feel they have to have, and just be able to be more spiritual. And then to have men sing at Mass, to hear the voices. What we're really doing is providing an opportunity, not for men to be more masculine, but honestly, for men to be able to be in an environment where they can drop their guard and be more spiritual and be more human, and kind of be able to understand what God really is expecting them. What is it really that God's expecting them to be, and who the man is that He's expecting them to be? Yeah. That in and of itself, that environment, will be a dramatic opportunity for men to get closer to Christ.
And in similar fashion, listeners may be familiar with the Malvern Retreat House, and they have the Men of Malvern. The people that I know that have done the Man Up, they go back year after year after year. It's the kind of thing that once you've been to it and you get a sense of it, now you go back at it yearly as almost a refresher.
Yes.
As okay, let me touch back to this point. I mean, Pete and I recently were at the Catholic Media Conference, which every time I attend it, I come back completely refreshed, simply because I have been able to focus and be amongst my colleagues and talk about all the difficult things that we face on a daily basis, and share in each other's trials and tribulations. So it's any of these kinds of encounters you get the opportunity from. Even we were talking about the sisters and their street evangelization they're doing. That's another opportunity of coming together as Catholics publicly together, where and proclaiming our faith together and reveling in our faith together. Which let's face it, oftentimes when you go to Mass on Sunday, you go to Mass, you leave Mass, you've done your duty. You haven't necessarily embraced, you haven't necessarily waded into the spirituality of the Mass. And it's simply because it's something we do on a regular basis. So we are as human as the next person, and things become rote after a little while. But a conference like this, or any experience similar to this, that's where the rejuvenation comes from. It certainly can happen in the Mass too. I'm not saying it doesn't happen at Mass, but sometimes when you break the habits you've been in, you do something a little different that you haven't done before. I don't know how many people. I don't know, Pete. Let me ask you. You one to frequent retreats, day-long retreats?
Yeah, I was on last year. I was at the Malvern retreat. It was a young adult retreat.
Okay.
Because I am a young adult, Mike. I might not be a millennial, but I am a young adult.
They sure wouldn't let me in there.
Yeah.
Mike says I'm a Zen. I think I'm a Zennial.
I think you're old, but that's neither here nor there.
Well, no. So your question about the retreat.
But you certainly understand the importance of a retreat like that, and the beauty of this one is you don't have to drive that far.
I'm a big fan just of these kind of spiritual experiences because they do rejuvenate, refresh. The Malvern was beautiful. Have you ever been to Malvern, Mike?
I have been invited to Malvern since my days in high school, and I have never gone.
Unfortunately, when I went, it was rainy, so didn't get to explore the grounds too much.
Yeah. But
just the chapel, it's just a beautiful.
I'm told it's
prayerful.
Wonderful. Yeah, I don't want to give them any more credit because we're talking about Man Up, but that's
they're great.
Yeah,
honestly,
and you've been,
it's great. I've been there many times.
Yeah,
and Malvern provides the opportunity for hundreds of men each weekend to get together to really encounter Christ in a special way. It really is a great place. What we're trying to do a little bit different is with our conference is what often happens when men go to a retreat, or people in general go to a retreat. They get home and they're excited and they're feeling good. And then by a day later, it's kind of back and nothing has changed. What we're hoping to be able to do is provide the opportunity for continued change. So we're looking at providing talks about how men can start their own spirituality group, their own Bible study group. One of the things that we're probably also going to be doing is encouraging them to maybe do the Men Rise Up series, which is something that's being done out of Philadelphia also right now. It's actually starting out of a production company there, but it's actually spreading throughout the United States, where there's daily videos that a person can watch. There's very short videos. So right now we're working through the logistics of what can we do when this is over to kind of engage them to continue in this growth.
Well, I know that, I'm a Knight of Columbus, but I've also been invited. I've never been to this. I don't know if you two are familiar with the Kingsmen. That's another parish. I don't know if it's parish based or just somebody. Hey, can we host a Kingsmen's group? And the priest says, sure. I'm not sure about that, but I think that sounds great. With what that is a tendency of mine to. I hate to admit that, you get, rah, and then a week later, you get off that high.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I think you mentioned this briefly just a few moments ago, and you may have mentioned it when we first started talking about it, when we first introduced you. But Man Up Philly really started out of prayer groups.
Yes.
Can you talk about how Eustace? Seriously, this entire entity that has been created really owes its formation to a handful of guys getting together and on a Friday morning to pray together.
That is exactly correct. It comes out of a desire for men to be able to strengthen their faith. And men who started prayer groups together, and men who, whether they conference called in because they couldn't make it into the meeting, but every Friday or whatever day they chose, got together to be able to break open the Word, just to spend a few minutes, talk about what it meant to them, fill their day with the Lord, and spiritually get them moving. And it is exactly right. From that emerged this idea of, what about doing a men's conference? So a lot of the success of Philadelphia is encouraging the men who attend to begin their own prayer groups when they leave. Whether it's a small group from their parish, whether it's a small group from work, whatever it might be, whether it's a prayer group, whether it's a Bible study group, the encouragement to make this happen 52 weeks a year, even if it's just for 30 minutes a week. that is an amazing result that has come out of it in Philadelphia.
Yeah. It's one of the things that really, it's one of the elements of the conference that really touched me, and I'm kind of kicking myself that I haven't just stolen it as a concept and found my own group of men that have a Friday morning or a Monday morning or Wednesday morning, whenever it was, just 30 minutes of existing in our spirituality, as opposed to the usual commute to work, get your coffee, do your work, commute home.
And you do know, Mike, that the fact that that's rolling around, that's bouncing around your brain, that's the Holy Spirit keeping that alive. Listen to it, and you have that opportunity to start it.
Yeah.
So we'll talk about that in the podcast when I interview you next time.
That's right, the Man Up podcast. That might be the way to go. But it's true. I mean, even within our own diocesan offices, starting the day off with, we right next to the cathedral, so Mass is always at 12:05. You can always go over there and avail yourself of it. But there is something I really like about starting the day with it that I kind of kick myself that I haven't had a chance to do. I get the impression, Pete, you would appreciate that too.
What, the start of the day with Mass?
Starting one day a week in a men's group, like and discussing.
I would love that.
Yeah.
Diocesan, we could open it up to this building. Or to the dice. I don't know. I don't want to.
But that was actually the thing that always impressed me about Eustace's story is, so they would do it via conference call.
That's right.
They would all just call into a number, and if they couldn't be there directly, they would call into a number, and it was the one thing they never missed, and still to this day, I believe, never miss is their Friday morning, 8:30 in the morning, spiritual meeting.
I could totally, I think I
that's a real commitment to your faith.
Wonderful.
We don't make.
And you know what? We talked about meeting people where they are. There are times that people can't get together, but technology provides us with the way of being able to do it.
Yeah.
Conference calling in there's nothing wrong with that. That's a fine way of being able to do it. So when we talk about the new evangelization, the message is the same, but how we get the word out there is different. And we utilize all of the technology that we possibly can to make that happen. What we're talking about right now is a great example of that.
Well, I hate to use this reference, but you're reminding me of this real-life story that became a movie about male bonding called Tag. You heard about this movie, Mike?
No.
There's a movie, Tag, that's out now with Jeremy Renner, and I think, who is it? The guy from Mad Men? John Hamm. I think he's in it. But this is a real-life story of these guys who, since high school, have been playing a game of tag. And I think how it is, it's one day a year or something in February, where they basically travel across country just to tag each other. Like, hit them, tag, you're it. And the person is then it for the next year. Something along those lines, but it basically was a way for them to stay together, to stay friends. And I think they tagged each other at their weddings, just tapped them on the shoulder, Oh, do you know what TAG stands for? TAG?
No.
Touch and go.
I
didn't know that.
I never heard that either. So it's just something like that.
I'm so glad we were able to get a Pete tidbit into this podcast. I was worried we were going to go through the whole podcast without some unique Pete thing.
Well, I just learned that myself, learning about, but it's so interesting how these men created a novel way to keep in touch over the 20 years or so.
Well, that's one of the things that I really like about this conference so much is, in our personal lives, we will from time to time try to do that. For instance, even though my knees are shot and my back is going out on me, do I play in the Thanksgiving football game every year? Yes, I do. Awesome. Do I pay for it? Yes, I do. But the thing I love about it is being around all these guys. And it was when I played pickup basketball, softball, and football, it was that sensation. And as a guy who's now creeping up into middle age or fully into middle age, I kind of pine for those opportunities because they just don't exist anymore. Don't get me wrong. I'm very happy to be a family man. I'm very happy with my professional colleagues. I'm very happy with my life in general. But I miss that male friendship that and an opportunity to sort of come together. I did not sort of envision this podcast turning into a psychotherapy session for the male ego, but it's true then, and for people who are listening, for women that are listening, you've always wondered what makes men crazy and why we think the way we think. I hope you're gleaning a little out of this, but it's true, this is something that Bishop Sullivan felt was important enough that he wanted to see this happen. And let's face it, if there has been an element of the Catholic Church that has, come under scrutiny, it's that you go into our churches and you'll see a lot of female faces, but you don't see nearly as many male faces. And there are statistics that suggest that has repercussions. Families where intact families where the father does not go to Mass with the family has a negative impact on the kids and their spirituality. Now, that's not to say that you won't be successful otherwise, and the people who don't have fathers or widowers or things, you deal with what you got to deal with. But when you have the opportunity for the father to attend Mass with the rest of the family, and not just cursory, but be an active participant in it, that makes a big difference.
Absolutely.
In the health of a family.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Can I ask you both? Speaking of, we're on this topic now. Let's go around the table. I guess starting with Deacon Anthony. Who's been can you speak of an example of a good model of a good male role model in your life?
There's actually a couple I had. One was my dad. I was very, very fortunate. My dad was an excellent role model in many, many ways. He was not a big churchgoer. My mom was. My mom was a daily communicant. My dad wasn't a big churchgoer. My dad said the rosary every night. My dad made sure that we had faith. And in watching my dad, just the way he lived his life, in terms of his honesty, his integrity, his love for the family, he was an excellent role model for me. I was also really very, very fortunate. I had a couple of great high school teachers. I went to a Catholic high school, an all-boys Catholic high school in Philadelphia. Had a couple of Catholic teachers who were just amazing in terms of how they lived their lives. And then one employer that I had, a person who owned the company, I was with that company for many, many years. He was a Jewish man. The way he operated in his personal life, the honesty, the integrity, the family, the fatherhood. I watched the way he lived, and in many cases I remember myself just saying, that's the way I want to be. That's the way I want my kids to think about me. So I've been very, very fortunate to be able to have some very, very good role models, some very good male role models in my life.
You, Mike?
Dad's still number one. Unquestionably, I named my son after him because he was such an important role model. He wasn't. I would never call him a rah-rah Catholic. My mom converted to Catholicism, so as all converts, she was nuts for the faith, and in all the best ways possible. So, and whereas my father was a cradle Catholic, but he always at Mass with us. He's a lector now. He had an unquestioning faith, which I think has been passed on to me, and I hope to pass on to Jack. What I found is that, to answer your question a little more fully, is that at different stages of my life, there were different men that played an important role. In the early years, the first 22 years was my dad. After that, one of our podcast guests, Father Joe Byerly, and a guy by the name of Tom Henry, who's a little younger than me, but he has such a dedication to his faith and such a knowledge of his faith that it constantly blows me away. I just spent some time with him the other day, and he was, as usual, wowing me with his perspective. And Father Jim Bartoloma, the Chancellor of the Diocese, who I've known for a long time, the four of us, along with our wives, significant others, friends, would get together, and I would just sit in awe of those three, as well, actually, as the Quesos as well. We're part of that group. They made it possible for me to really embrace my faith. And then in these later years, I'm very happy to be working for the diocese because I've been able to work with great Catholic men like Kevin Hickey, the head of Catholic Charities, and Mike Lasky, the head of the Social Justice Department, and Greg Coogan, the head of Youth and Young Adult, and Bishop Dennis Sullivan, who, is really the pinnacle there, and Father Hughes, who has such a great perspective on life, and all these, and I'm sorry if I'm leaving it, and Dr. Bill Watson, the voiceover guy, who all these guys, I listen to them talk, and I'm like, yep, I got to learn how to be better, because these guys are really great. And then you throw a Deacon Anthony Cioe into the mix, and you're like, all right, first of all, I'm not going to become a deacon because I'm not good enough, and B, I'm just going to sit and listen to this guy talk for a little while, because that's a nice particularly when you got on to, we were talking about missionary discipleship, I was like, I'm not going to need to have to talk for the rest of this podcast, because you're just going to go, and you have such an enthusiasm for the faith, but more importantly, you really want people to understand it. And I think those kinds of Catholic men who, with the possible exception of my father, everybody I just mentioned is a enthusiastic evangelizer and educator who really wants people to understand the faith, be welcomed into the faith. None of those men I just talked about ever put up blockades. Mm-hmm. They may have different perspectives. They may have a different understanding of how Catholicism works in today's day and age, but each and every one of them wants it to be open to people to come to Jesus. And yeah, so I tell people all the time, look for those people and don't be afraid of them. I mean, everyone I just mentioned is smarter than me and more eloquent than me, and I gravitate towards them because I'm like, I want to be more like that guy. Unfortunately, I got a lot of that guys to point at, but yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, there might be a Deacon Mike Walsh sometime in the future. I don't know.
We're talking to Deacon Michael Anthony Carter or Michael Carter too much. He'd like to see a Deacon Mike Walsh as well.
I don't know.
You guys work too hard.
God works in mysterious ways. Yeah, but we have fun. We love what we do.
And that's the thing.
Absolutely love what we do.
Every deacon we've had on the podcast has been an excellent representative of the diaconate and is absolutely joyful in their role, no matter what it is, and I love it. Which is what oftentimes in the back of my mind, maybe we should become a deacon. But seriously, you guys work too hard.
That's great. That's great. I have to thank you very, very much. I just can't thank you enough for really allowing me this time to talk about the Man Up Conference. And again, if I could just give my shameless plug for the end, if I can. So for men who are listening out there, it's November 10th. It's a Saturday. You can register online, manupsouthjersey.com. The schedule is on there. There will be some changes we'll be making to it as days come forward, but all the information you need is out there. It's going to be at Paul VI High School at their conference center. What an amazing facility. I've got to tell you, we looked at a number of different facilities to try to determine where to have it, and we just walked out just in the air on how beautiful that facility is and how great it's going to work for this conference. We know we've chosen the right speakers. We know we've chosen the right venue. We know that we've got everything there to be able to create an encounter for men. We just need the men to come. So we ask you, please, moms, register your sons. Wives, register your husbands. Dads, take your kids. It is really worth the time. It begins at 8. We end our Mass at the end of the day is at 4 o'clock, and it will be a joyful time. www.manupsouthjersey.com, November 10th, and I hope that we will fill that theater to capacity. Thank you so very much.
Deacon Anthony, thank you very much for joining us. This was great. Pete and I will certainly be there that day. Mm-hmm. We're looking forward to it. If you have any questions, you can also, Deacon Anthony's information is on the website. You can always contact him directly. Certainly, there's also social media for Man Up South Jersey, which you can also avail yourselves of. And Pete, this was we're going to call this another good podcast.
I think it's another great podcast.
Yeah, do me a favor. While I'm here, call it a good podcast. After I leave, It's okay.
We'll pick it apart. It'll be the first one we heavily edit. No, just kidding. We're not going to edit this at all. This was a great podcast. We almost never edit. The only thing I was take out my own stupid things that I say. But this has been great. Well, Pete, you and I are heading down to the shore tomorrow for a podcast that'll actually go up before this podcast. So it'll be nice seeing you. For that podcast, we'll fill everyone in on every place we ate. Mm-hmm. But so anyway, thanks a lot, Pete.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Deacon.
Thank you very much. God bless you both.